you're gonna take notes? You're gonna take notes? Damn, bro. I feel like I know you.
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's been so long since I've come here that I'd be surprised anyone that I knew back then is still here.
They're like a super senior.
I'm not. Man.
I know one girl from my freshman year who actually still attends here.
How long ago were you here?
So my first semester at FIU was the second half of 2014. 2014. My name is Bryant Pickford. I'm a security specialist solutions architect. A very long title to just basically mean and say that I solve problems. That's it. That's all it is. And I work for a company called Amazon. Well, Amazon Web Services. It's more of the sister company. So this course and this workshop is around not just privacy and building a VPN, but I do want to have that formal conversation of why that's important. Right? Not just for comp sci majors, not just for cybersecurity majors, right? Not just for, I want this to be built for the individual, right? Why should I convince you to care about your own privacy? And how we can then, building our own VPN, introduce privacy onto yourself. And so if you do have questions on anything, I do want you to be able to ask them freely. You can raise your hand. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this is very much a privacy crash course. And I do hope you all learn something. I'm gonna be staring at you a lot, just letting you know. So, for the agenda for today, we'll just go into a quick introduction to privacy. Then we'll go into understanding privacy threats. If anyone can decipher this, that is the certification. I'll leave it there for a second. We'll go over something. That's an act. Then we'll go into how are we going to be utilizing some of these open source technologies to enhance our own privacy. And then lastly, we'll go into the workshop. Traditionally, this should take about 1.5 hours to 2 hours, and I'm pretty sure I think we'll be fine. So a little bit of an introduction about myself. I think I already spoke to some people here who was here early, but I'm so sorry I have to explain this again. But a little bit about myself. So I am a bit of a crazy person. I have too many hobbies that I did not want to fit on this. So I'm a producer and a DJ. I've been producing since I was 17 years old. I actually met Martin Garrix and I go to Ultra every year. So if anyone's going to Ultra and you want to see me and you want to have fun, I'm down for it. I'm a licensed skydiver and I'm also a runner. Now, in terms of more of like, well, what's the type of job that I do? Being a security specialist basically makes me and allows me to be able to work with customers I ultimately never thought I would work with, whether they be enterprise, whether they be games, whether they be banks, whether they be pretty much almost anything. And an aspect of that allows me to be able to go to conferences, be able to speak to, I don't know if anyone's ever been or seen Tech with Lucy.
Sorry, could you maybe use the mic?
Sure.
Back?
I don't know if anyone has seen Tech with Lucy. She's a YouTube channel. But ultimately speaking, this allows me to be able to, work with companies such as Riot Games, be able to attend not only their Worlds competition, which they invited me to, and we ran this whole entire awesome AI ML project, but it ultimately allows me to be able to help not only customers that are just like, hey, I'm having a really bad day with some cybersecurity problem, right? We've been hacked, we're being attacked, right? Having that sort of person to just come in, be able to understand, listen, and be able to respond to that is an ongoing skill that I hope all of you one day learn, right? It's not just, hey, I want to learn, how do I solve the problem, right? What's an adaptable solution to this? And that's pretty much my day-to-day. My day-to-day is really just working with customers, being like, hey, what's the problem? Let's figure out how to solve this. And so an introduction to privacy. Now, what does privacy really mean in today's world? When I was a kid, privacy was a lot more simplified. There wasn't so much technology in the hands of every single person, right? Facebook wasn't a thing. MySpace, oh God. MySpace was not a thing. And so how do we really start defining privacy in today's world, right? The significance of it and sort of the landscape of it from a compliance perspective or regulatory body, right? So for defining privacy, it's typically known as the right of individuals to control their own personal information and how it's used. That is a conversation I think, especially now, is becoming harder and harder to have. Hello? And therefore, we should be able to ask that, not just for ourselves, not just for our parents. If anyone's been asked, like, oye, ¿me puedes ayudar con, like, can you help me with this, like, government thing? And you have to do everything for your parents. Having that sort of conversation around privacy is significant, right? The sort of significance of privacy, this is not just for, let's say, hospitals or, when you go to government. It's not meant to be a sort of hassle. It's meant to be sort of around security and dignity around it. Now, for the current privacy landscape, right? AI and a lot of technology advancing is making this a lot harder, right? I don't know if anyone knows of the most recent security breach that happened. They're as common as pretty much everything else. There's one every single day. Right, so if any of you are curious, there is a website you can go on called haveibeenpwned.com. I don't know if anyone has heard of it. Great. So if you're ever curious about, like, let's see, is my email compromised on some website that I was on? You can go on that and be able to look into that. Now, before we can go more into the application, the solution we'll be working on today, let's look at understanding privacy threats. Now, in terms of identifying the risk of personal privacy, we have many categories of cyber threats. If anyone's in cybersecurity, I'm sure you've learned a few attacks like malware, right? Man-in-the-middle attacks, stuff like that. For those who do not know, basically, and I hate to say this and surprise you and scare you, but if I have access to a network, I can, by design, manipulate it. It already comes built in. If I can spy on a network, I can manipulate it. And that is something that you don't have as a basic part of protection when you're in, let's say, a coffee shop or an airport or a hotel. And even at school, right? There could be someone right now just monitoring all of our network traffic and trying to see where we're going and so on and so forth. So there's different types of categories of cyber threats that we need to not only be knowing of, but be able to have conscious conversations with ourselves of, like, do I actually care if my information's out there, or do I want to be a little bit more of a private person? And I think especially now with the advent of AI and a bunch of other things, I think that's becoming more of an actual conversation with themselves, right? I want to be protected. So we can go into sort of corporate data collection. Now, this one I think is the most boring of all of them, but in the sense that, like, every single company is spying on us. Every company is collecting data on us. And they're using this data, they're combining with other third-party sources, and ultimately, not even to our discretion. We have no idea where they are. To tell an actual funny story, so I'm 29. If you did not think I was 29, thank you. If you thought I was younger, thank you. But I'm 29. When I first came to FIU, I came as a freshman. And at a time, I tried joining a club here. I don't know if that club still exists. I won't say the name. But there was a club, and do you still require, I'm gonna use you, do you still require like to sign up for a club that you have to do this whole application process?
It depends per club for their application process.
But is it like online, like something along the lines? Okay, so I didn't want to do any of that. I did not want to do any of that. I, at the time, was like, let me try to convince someone at the club to do it for me. Stick with me. And so I had asked the vice president at the time, hey, I would love to join your club. You know, I'd spoken to her multiple times. Out of curiosity, she Googled me, like just to look me up. And she found not only my home address, but my family and all this other stuff, and exposes it to me. Like, hey, just letting you know, I know where you live. I know your voter records. Like, and I was like, that's not nice. That's a bit of a concern. How did you do this, right? And that's actually how I got into cybersecurity. I got into cybersecurity trying to protect myself, right, from having that sort of problem. And lastly, government surveillance. The government is watching you. I am definitely on a list. I know it already. Funny enough, my FBI agent wanted to be here. She declined. She's working right now. I'm dead serious. But ultimately, that's a huge problem, right? It's not just, does our government trust us, you know, whatever the mechanisms for that, but it's, even if I trust my government, even if I trust my fellow man, do I want that information out there? So readily available, right, when I could just mitigate and stop it. Now, a question. Does the US commit mass surveillance on its citizens, and if so, through what act? You in the yellow?
Patriot Act.
Yes, okay, so I have a $25 gift card for you.
Oh my God.
It's to buy gas. So yes, it is the Patriot Act. So another question. Now I'm sorry to say this is across the board. Who was born after 2001? I hope the people in the live, like in the live stream, can see all this. Basically, like 2/3 of their hands went up. Ay, Dios mío. So I was born in '95. So I was a baby when 9/11 happened. Now, due to the events of 9/11, which were very tragic, right? We became a very much of a, how could we possibly have allowed this to happen? We had those internal conversations back then where we were really acting on fear. And acting on fear, whether it be in government or whether it be in your own personal life, can sometimes lead you to do very strategic or very extensive choices. And so with the Patriot Act, it basically increased the capability for the government to do mass surveillance in 4 different areas. So it allowed them to be able to record searches. Now, this does expand on their already ability to look into our records and our individual activity that is being held by third parties. Now, the document, the Patriot Act, is like 300 pages. I would not recommend any of you to read it, but what I did do is break down some of the most, I guess, more pressing parts. Now, what does a third party really mean? It basically means anything that is within the United States that is owned by a company or its intellectual property resists or exists in the United States. That's phone companies, that's tech companies, that's internet service providers. If you hate Comcast, you're gonna hate Comcast more, right? That's pretty much anything that lives, exists, and is owned in America, right? That allows them to be like, hey, you're gonna work with us to be able to survey your own customers, right? Going into secret searches. So it expands the government's ability to search private properties without notice of the owner. This one's a little bit less known, but that is still a problem. The other aspects of it could be intelligence searches. It expands a narrow exception to the Fourth Amendment that has been created for the collection of foreign intelligence information. Now, I spoke a little bit about how data, whether it be third party or whether it be anything really, is being monitored. Well, that's internally. We have massive sources. I don't know if everyone has seen the map that shows all of the pipelines that go through the ocean. from like America to Europe to like South America to Africa. All those, before they come into the land, are actually first analyzed and stored through our government systems. So if you're outside trying to access American products, you're automatically a part of the system as well. It's not just inside, it's also outside. And trap and trace searches. It expands another Fourth Amendment exception for spying that collects addressing information about the origin and destination of communications as opposed to the content. This one is really what started the whole Snowden case. It wasn't necessarily saying, hey, we're looking into traffic that ultimately is inherently bad based off the content. It's no, we just want to know where it went and where it's going, and that is it. That is the end of it. And that is a very dangerous position to be in when you're looking at everyone like they're a problem, right? Like they're criminals. And so how was that expanded? I like your pants. So with all acts, they have a deadline, right? All acts have deadlines. They have to either be provided some sort of extension after a certain period of time, right? Or some sort of conversation happens where like, okay, we're gonna start fixing some of these problems. And so what really came out of that was after Snowden had basically gone out and said, hey, yeah, the government is spying on you and all these companies are helping you, the government was like, okay, let's respond to that. And they created the Freedom Act of 2015, which is essentially Patriot Act 2.0. And all it really says is to rein in the dragnet collection of data by the NSA and the other government agencies. It increases the transparencies of foreign intelligence surveillance court, provide businesses the ability to release information regarding FISA requests, and creates an independent constitutional advocate to argue cases before the FISA court. Translation, we will tell you we're spying on you after 5 years. That is essentially what that meant, is we will provide transparency after a certain period of time. And many people that I actually work with, so I work in cybersecurity within AWS, certain people that I actually work with who, let's say, had very troubled childhoods, were eventually contacted in some means by businesses that they work with, by Google, saying, hey, just letting you know, the government's actually spying on you, and we just hit the 5-year mark of when they actually contacted us. Scary stuff. I'm still waiting on that message. I'm sure it's gonna come 5 years from now. So how are we gonna use technology that already exists? And I also understand I don't like paying $20 for VPNs, right? But how do we use the technology that already exists to enhance our privacy? Well, I'm introducing something that I call the sky hole. It's still a working title. I probably need to change it. But the idea of it is combining certain open source technologies such as Pi-hole, VPN, and Unbound. Does anyone know what Pi-hole is? Okay, 2. Does anyone know what a VPN is? Yeah, I feel like everyone who watches YouTube at this point. It's like, NordVPN. This is not sponsored by that, by the way. Unbound. I'd actually be very, really? Okay, I kind of want to hear this. What is it?
Okay, so all it really is a service that you can run to have your own self-hosted DNS server, which actually goes out to the server, verifies what you're hosting, what's your IP address, more people can view your server.
Yes, correct. So basically what he said was, and we'll go over it, it's basically a service you can run on your own system that basically says, hey, instead of going to third-party like DNS servers like Google, like Cloudflare, I'm gonna actually be my own. And whenever I want to look something up, I'm just gonna go into my own database of stuff that I already viewed before. So if I know where to go, I don't need a GPS, right? I'll just go. And so that is essentially what we'll be building today. Now, one conversation or question I would like to ask is, well, Bryant, you seem cool, I hope. Why do I care to build this when I can just pay someone else like NordVPN? Why would I use this? Anyone? So I will use blue.
Well, for me, it's better to do it yourself than work and trust someone else.
Okay, you're getting ahead of me. But like, what is the sort of, not the moral sort of reason, but what would be a good reason, like a technical reason or a law reason why you would want to build your own instead of using something else? I'll use do.
Because you're not a company, so you won't be forced to give away the information.
Okay, close. Anyone else? Yeah.
Because you got full control of what you do.
Okay, you're getting, okay, so what I'm hearing is you have full control, it's in your hands, but what I'm trying to say is, okay, that's already part of building this, right? Part of building this is that comes included. Why wouldn't you just go pay for a VPN, is my point.
Because that company that's providing the VPN will have access to your data. Inevitably.
Yes, that is the reason why most VPN companies that are advertised in America reside in America, which means that they're held and bound by all the laws we just spoke about, which means that if your ISP doesn't know where you go, your VPN companies do. And they're by law required to store all that information. So that is the main reason why a lot of people, you know, and I have family members who are like, especially I think, I had a good friend of mine hit me up at the beginning of this year. So I live in New York now, by the way. I was born and raised in Miami, but I live in New York, and I had a friend of mine contact me like, hey man, so I hear you made a VPN, and you're like gonna have this, you know, whatever, you know, workshop. Cool, I don't want to attend, but I want to make my own VPN. So can you like help me build it? And I gave him, you know, my initial understandings of how to build it, and he comes back to me and he's like, it's not working. And I'm like, okay, well, use this, test it out. And he's like, no, it's showing in Virginia, but it's still not working. Another reason you may want to use a VPN is you want to really show yourself in a different location. Does anyone know what law went into place January 1st in Florida? You're laughing because you got it. I'm not going to say it. So if you know it and someone next to you is like confused, you might want to whisper to them, I'll give you 30 seconds. So, okay. Okay, let's put it down a bit. So, yeah, let's put it down a bit. So you are correct. The fact that you're snickering is the exact reaction I had, because he did not want to tell me why. And the thing that you have to learn is when you use a VPN, sure, you can go from Florida to Virginia to California, all the way even to like Switzerland. But now you are abiding their laws. So pick where you go carefully. And it so happens to be that Virginia was the first state to do that. That thing that I won't speak about. Turns out, I didn't know that. But I found out through him. But that's another consideration, right?
Yeah, that's actually great. Did he admit it, or did you find out?
So I helped troubleshoot with him for like 30 minutes. I was like, bro, like, what do you mean it's not working? Because like I got him to show me screenshots that it said, yeah, it's showing up in Virginia. And then he's like, no, but it's still asking me to verify. I'm like, what are you talking about verifying? I won't say his name, but I was like, verify. Curious. But, you know, that's a huge other aspect of VPN that NordVPN, all the other companies don't talk about is, okay, now that your traffic is going to another state, what are those states' laws, right? How does that affect us? Some of the most strictest like internet privacy laws, funny enough, are not in Florida, right? They're not even in New York and in California, actually, depending, but they're actually in some of the more smaller states. And so if you want to put a VPN there and then utilize it in a certain method, right? Some people like watching Netflix. Some people like watching K-pop or K-dramas. You have to then take into consideration, how is that location I'm picking going to be the deciding factor of how I utilize this tool? And so that's something I do want to state and use, because I do not want anyone contacting me after this like, hey, it doesn't work. Yeah. So going on to what is a pie hole. So a pie hole is one of the three technologies we'll be talking and utilizing today. It is considered a DNS sinkhole. What that essentially means is that, hey, as traffic is being requested, let's say you're trying to go into YouTube, YouTube will respond with multiple different DNS requests, right? It'll be like .ads, .youtube, YouTube analytics. You can pick and choose which one you want. By default, it accepts all of it because it assumes that everything is required. What a Pi-hole does is say, yeah, I don't want those ads, block it. I don't want the analytical stuff, block it. I just want the actual content of what I want. You'll see this in effect when we go into like CNN, which is like 90% ads, but it's basically meant to just stop unwanted content. And the benefit of that is you get one, network-wide protection. If you want to actually utilize this in your own home, you can. I actually have this set up in my own house, right? It's super lightweight. It's meant to block in-app advertisements as well. It, in theory, will improve network performance, and I'll ask why. And you also are able to sort of monitor your statistics, right? See how quickly something happens, and so on and so forth. Now, let me ask a question. Why would this hypothetically improve network performance? Even though it says it right there, why?
Because there's so many requests that it doesn't have to do because it's blocking.
Yes, so in theory, what happens is you are requesting for less data because you're just dropping it before it actually reaches its destination, which is your computer, your phone, so on and so forth. You're good. So what is a VPN? And this is not a sales pitch. So a VPN is a virtual private network. It's meant to be a service. It could be a solution. People tend to typically see this more as a proxy in many cases because of the method that it's very comparable to a proxy. But it's meant to just create a sort of secure and encrypted connection over the internet typically, and allows you to be able to protect your online privacy and access restricted content. It, in theory, can hide your IP. There should be an asterisk there, and I should have added one. It will hide your IP and encrypt your data and make it harder for other people to track you. But let me tell you this. If I could track you, I could track you. The government could track you. So this is meant to be a stepping stone. This is not a sort of, and I think a lot of VPN companies talk about it like, oh yeah, this is like, use this as comprehensive. This is very much just kicking the can down the street, right? If I have enough time and effort, I can trace back where that VPN connection originated from, if you think about it, right? And this is actually why the solution we'll be talking about is really interesting, because if I'm a person and I'm like, hey, I want to access VPN logs, what's the first place I can go to? A VPN company. All their business is VPN. But if I go to a random server in AWS, who knows what that does? It could be a game server, right? It could be anything. It could run my taxes. It could run the surveillance on me seeing my dogs, right? You can't possibly know without investigating deeper. And so that is the mechanism of why we're doing a VPN, or building out our own VPN. And lastly, what is Unbound? So as the gentleman stated, it is a DNS resolver. And this is essentially what Google or your ISP, Comcast, or AT&T do. They basically validate the request. They're like, hey, you want to go Google? We know where that is. And so what Unbound basically does is that it caches your most commonly resolved websites so that it doesn't have to go to these sort of third-party companies, right? Google, Cloudflare, a few others. And what that really does provide you as well is other sort of validations. DNS sync, if anyone knows what that is. I don't. Does anyone know what DNS sync is? We'll talk about it, but it's more, I guess you could say, more new technology that's starting to be utilized a lot more. It is something that I hope all of you do turn on when we finish this, but it's basically meant to ensure that the DNS result is not compromised. I don't want to really go too deep into why, but let me just say this. Hackers that breach companies, the first thing they go to is a DNS server. If I can control where you're routed, I can control everything, if you think about it. If I control your GPS, I can send you to Hialeah when you wanted to go to Homestead. Although, why would you want to go to Homestead? Right? And I live in Homestead. Well, but that's basically the whole point of DNS security is that how do we validate these requests are coming from a legitimate place, right? A lot of websites are starting to adopt this, and I do hope that all of you do take that seriously, because one of the biggest aspects that I see with some of my customers who have been compromised, who are losing millions of dollars, is we didn't validate our DNS requests, right? Caching, right? This is just meant to sort of speed up the lookups by having already that results nearby. If you're constantly going on YouTube, why do I need to go to Google to know where YouTube is? I already know. Privacy focused, hello. Privacy focused, so you don't have to log the queries by default. What this does is, even in the event of this server being compromised, there's no trace, right? We're clear. And this is meant to be lightweight and fast. Now, typically, this is a normal traditional diagram of how a person would access YouTube, right? There is a lady named Amelia, and she is actually, I think I clicked this. That's fine. So there's Amelia, and she's currently utilizing a VPN, right? The mechanism of how that works is that from her device through the router, through her ISP, it's going to first connect to the VPN server, and that entire bridge is encrypted by default. So any person in the middle of this building or anywhere in this campus is monitoring us, we're gonna be good, right? Now, when it comes to the VPN server, it's still going to, by default, with VPN companies, utilize third-party DNS servers, because that's what they use, right? And that could be Google, that could be any of these other analytical tools, and so then it'll direct us still to YouTube. If we introduce something like Pi-hole on top of our VPN, now Pi-hole is gonna be like, yeah, we're gonna start blocking queries that have nothing to do with our server, that have nothing to do with what I want, and any sort of unblocked queries, we're just gonna allow, forward it, and cool, we'll be good. And then lastly, we're gonna be introducing Unbound. Now, with Unbound, it's a little bit interesting because it goes more into like root DNS servers, but basically Google is not the root DNS server. There are actual root DNS servers that are actually held by, I think NIST, the National Institute of Science Technology, and they're considered root DNS servers, so that even if Google were to go down, you would still be able to find out where a certain service is. And the mechanism of how this works is that Pi-hole will work in tandem with Unbound, our caching mechanism. It'll be like, hey, we need to contact the root DNS server, which will take us one layer down to the authoritative DNS server, and that will be like, oh yeah, we know where it is. And so we're basically circumventing the entire third-party DNS server, and the entire process in and out is all encrypted. I'm in and out. I have one question, just one, and then I'll give another gift card. Do you think this will be slow? Do you think it'll be slower? Why? Okay, but in terms of, okay, let me rephrase the question. So if you know where a location is, right? Is it easier to get there the more times you go there, right? I should be seeing some, like if you want to go home, do you need to open your GPS? At best, you're opening your GPS to find out, like, it's gonna take me 30 minutes with traffic, right?
If you're constantly changing the location, you can't store it in cache.
Exactly. So it makes it a lot easier for us to look like we're in different locations or different sort of places by going to the root DNS server directly than, let's say, these third parties that we're meant to go to. I have no idea what, you could actually look up what the DNS server is for here. Like, you could find it if you use traceroute. Now, one question, I will give you the gift card. I did not forget about you. Are you in a frat?
No.
Okay, cool. I was curious, I was in a frat when I was here. But One question, and I do want everyone can participate. This is not to be a technical question. What are the safest hands in the world? They're not a baby. Say again? Yes. Yes, the safest hands will always be your own. What?
He said write that down.
You said write that down? But yeah, no, they are your own. And the the hardest part about my job as a cybersecurity specialist is that, you know, when I'm working with customers, when I'm working with some of these businesses, right, some of the hardest questions that I have to ask to them is what could we have done differently, right? And let's take a few steps back and figure out where we messed up, right? And take that responsibility. But ultimately, when I give you the advice of, hey, I need you to do X, Y, Z, I need you to, let's say, introduce a firewall, introduce, you know, sort of guardrails, right? Let's have layer and defense. Let's do code security. Let's do just a multitude of things that we can do to increase not only security, but the posture of our resources, right? That is very much me having that conversation with my customer being like, hey, your hands are far safer than mine. I'm simply a guiding hand, right? And so that actually is going to bring us into the workshop. Is there any questions? You can ask anything. It doesn't have to be specific to this. Oh, sure.
I would say it's much more of a personal question.
Sure.
From the raise of Pi-hole that you went at start, have you noticed any issues with certain websites not working, given like completely nuking certain DNS codes?
So with certain websites, yes. And we'll go over that a little bit when we're doing the workshop. So with certain websites, they require almost like certain DNS requests. Now with Pi-hole, you could go into the sort of query of the logs and be able to diagnose like, oh yeah, like this is the issue. Like if there's a massive website you're going to constantly, like let's say FIU, I would recommend probably whitelisting that, right? Or allow listing that. But ultimately speaking, when it comes to certain websites that have seen issues, I see that more with certain applications that require like a certain request, but it's like hidden in like an ad. So you'll see it. It's basically, it'll be like if you're a gamer, there's certain allow lists that I can provide you to say, hey, this will allow like Xbox gaming. And you need that as an allow list to allow it to work. Because if not, it will be seen as an ad and it'll block it. But it's meant to be more of like the company taking in, I guess you could say telemetry, like understanding how much are you playing, how much are you active. And in certain cases like that, you know, if you're a gamer, you gotta, you know, allow it in certain mechanisms. But that's a great question. Is there any other questions?
How often do you actually use your
All the time.
like your mobile device?
All the time.
Just everything?
So, damn, how much can I say? No, because there's been certain, I think that I told you a few stories that I did not tell everyone. Actually, let's see, what time is it? I think I might tell some of the stories. So I used to work in a few different things before I started working in security or as a security specialist at Amazon. I used to work as a cybersecurity consultant. I used to also work as an incident response technician. When I worked as an incident response technician, do you know what incident response, like the field of that is?
Not really.
Okay, so I'll break it down a little bit. So incident response is a substrat of cybersecurity. So cybersecurity being the main topic. Incident response is on the other side of like pen testing, of like hacking. It's, oh, something happened to us. What do we do? Look at that guy. You know, what do we do, right? It's the idea of, okay, there's been an incident. How do we respond to this? And so when I used to work before my current job, I used to work in incident response, and I would see multi-million-dollar companies in Miami get hacked. I've seen the city of Marathon get hacked while I was there helping another company. And having to then go into their buildings, into their servers, and being able to not only help them bring some of their servers back up, right? Introduce backups, like see if they have backups, and like what are the path forward for rebuilding their entire servers and like figuring out, well, how did this happen? It's a massive field in itself. You can do that, like that's its own thing. But that gave me a good idea of like how bad it is out there. And so the company that was hacked in Marathon, the city, was hacked because they were, I think one of their like C-suite people were essentially utilizing their computer publicly. And so I'll explain. So do we have markers? You have a marker? Great, I like you. So I will quickly show the fear of what a man-in-the-middle attack is. And if I, like I said, if I have control over a network and I can manipulate it by default. Thank you. So let's say this, can I use FIU as an example? Okay, cool. I'm asking you for permission. So if I get in trouble, that's on you. So let's say FIU has this massive network.
Oh, wait, I have another marker. Okay. It was a 1 in a 4 chance that it didn't work.
Whatever. So this can be applied to anything. This could be applied to coffee shops. And that's typically like if anyone's seen, not Silicon Valley, if anyone's seen Mr. Robot. So like the first scene you see is a coffee shop, or one of the first things you see is a coffee shop. That is taken from a very common attack vector for a lot of people. Like if you see me in a hoodie in a coffee shop, just walk out. So this can be at coffee shops. This can be at like airports very commonly. This can be also done at hotels and especially conferences, right? Like shell hack. Yeah, no, not hackathons, like just conferences in general, like massive amounts of people, high volume, all within one network, and they all have to share it, right?
So like FIU.
Yes, so like FIU, but that's the reason why I was like, eh. So let's say there's a bunch of people here, right? They're all connected to the same network, right? And let's just say this is just the Wi-Fi, right? Let's say me, I am bad. I am using a tool that allows me to survey what everyone is doing. And so I can peer what everyone's doing, what websites you're on, and that's already built in. The moment I get access to this network, the moment I get into that network, whether it has a password or not, I can survey the entire thing. It's literally built into it. So how would you protect yourself from this? You would use a VPN. A VPN will secure this connection so that no one can get in and no one can see it. Not even the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi is just like, oh, yeah, you need to go out? Cool, I'll send you out. I have no idea what you're doing. But everyone else is just peering eyes. Now, I said, if I can understand and look at what's happening in the network, I can manipulate it. It's by design. Well, I can say, okay, this is terrible, but I'm now going to be the router. I wrote rogue, but I'm now going to be the router. This is actually something I was going to bring in today, but I was like, no, I shouldn't. Because it was a tool that I built out myself. But basically, I can then act as the Wi-Fi, and I can say, all of you have to connect to me before going out. It's called there's different types. There's called man-in-the-middle attacks if anyone's cybersecurity, right? Where I now am taking the middle point between you and that router or the Wi-Fi. But the other aspect of it too is called a rogue access point. I can copy the name and the sort of credentials of that network, pretend to be it, all of you off of it, like deauthenticate all of you off of it, and tell you, hey, come to me, I'm FIU Wi-Fi. That is the scariest part of all this, is this happens all the time. Does anyone know what DEF CON is? If you can raise your hand. Yeah, this happens every year at DEF CON. Every year I know at least 4 people got hacked. And they're like, yeah, we can trace it back to DEF CON. I'm like, no, yeah, no, like obviously. But that's the scary part of this, is that you would think people who are security focused, security practitioners, security experts would know the first thing, which is, if I don't own this network, I inherently don't trust it. And so that's what I want all of you to do, because these attacks are super easy to do. I can use very, very cheap sort of computers and softwares, and it's all free. What's up?
So if you have a VPN and you connect to like a rogue access point, like would VPN protect you? Or?
Yes, yes. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit, but basically, let's say this is you. This is the Wi-Fi or the router, whatever the case may be, right? And then this is the internet, right? Let's say there's a bad person here. They're like, yeah, cool. I'm just going to make you come to me, right? Now, under normal circumstances, if you did not have a VPN, they could just see everything, transfer it back to the Wi-Fi. It'll go back to the internet. It'll come back. And in many cases, they'll actually take your encryption keys. Like, let's say for your banking or stuff like that. That happens commonly. But they can do that, then send it right back to you and be like, it never looked like anything happened, because they're the ones who manipulated the entire network around you. So the way you could solve this is by using a VPN. If you use a VPN, the initial connection is encrypted by default. They can't do anything with it. If they don't send it, you're just gonna be like, it doesn't work, right? And you're gonna be like, why doesn't it work? Okay, let me go try it again. And if it continues to not work, then you can then be a little bit more suspicious. Is it the VPN server? You can check on your other phone, right? And see, oh no, it's up, it's working. What's up? And then from there, you can be like, no, let me start checking other things, right? And this is a very common thing that I see a lot of times happen when I go to hotels, because I travel a lot for work, where I'm like, why doesn't my VPN work? Let me try it on my phone. And through my phone, what I'll do with my phone is I won't connect to the Wi-Fi. I'll connect to like 5G, like let's say T-Mobile. And then from there, I'll go to my VPN. If this works, this by theory should work, right? And that's the thought process of it. But great question. Is there any other questions? You. Yeah, sure.
So in the first example, when you were sending off your information, ideally encrypted through a VPN, but you have some outside attacker who's purveying it, sending it over, and then manipulating it and sending it back to you. But in the second one, can you explain the 5G?
So this is a phone. So the assumption is, right, that, let's do this. So the assumption is that this is using a VPN, right? And because it's going to this person, right, a man-in-the-middle attack, they may decide to not push it forward because they can't even break it, right? And in many cases, if you're talking about like and this is not gonna happen to any of you, I hope not, if we're talking about like a state government where they have unlimited amounts of supplies, they've already broken most of the VPN like encryption mechanisms, like for like a lot of the older ones. But if he or she does not send that forward, that's gonna appear to me as like, why isn't my VPN working? And that might make you a little bit more suspicious of like, why isn't my VPN working? Let me try it on my phone. On this, let's say, scenario, instead of actually connecting to the Wi-Fi, I'm just going directly into my, like, let's say, mobile data, T-Mobile, and then from there, I'm directly connecting to my VPN. If this works, this by theory should work. And if this doesn't work, then one of two things is happening. The Wi-Fi sucks, or I'm under attack. And this is something that someone can just leave a little Raspberry Pi in a hotel, leave it, come back in a few weeks, right? Like, I'll stay here for 2 days, I'll leave my device, I'll come back in 2 weeks. And that happens so often. And one of the things that really puts me in fear is because this happened to my mom. Not this scenario, but essentially like my mom is like old-fashioned Mexican, like super old, like can't speak English. And one of the things that happened was that she was connected to Wi-Fi that ultimately took a lot of her banking information. right? They basically sent her to something that looked like Chase, but no era Chase, no sé. Se vio, pero no era. Me preguntó, like it asked me for my number in my phone and I didn't understand it. So like that's where a lot of, I'm not teaching my mom this is impossible, but this is where that became a question of like, okay, how can I apply this to everyone, right? To protect not just myself as a security practitioner, but to protect all of you, right?
How does the Wi-Fi server knows the encrypted data that you send?
So normally with traffic, this is gonna be like an HTTP class now, but basically when it comes to requests, there's like different sections of it. Now with the original portion, all it's saying is a destination. So you can say like 19.168.0.1, right? And that's the router. That is the thing that the router will accept, and then it'll get into the next part where it's like, oh yeah, we need to go to, Google. And it's like, well, I don't know where Google is. I'm going to send it to my DNS, and they'll figure it out. So it's basically like, okay, I know where the next person is, and that's it. That's all they know, right? That's how ISPs work and function. What this person is essentially doing is they're just placing themselves here, and that is it. They're just like, cool, where do you think you want to go? You want to go out. Okay, but where exactly? Oh, you want to go to Google. Okay, I'm going to take your key, change it with my own, send it forward. It'll come back, and I'll decrypt it for you. Well, re-encrypt it, but decrypt it, then re-encrypt it. But that's essentially the scenario of that, is that the package, the remaining package may be, what's it called, encrypted, but this is crackable if I own where you're going.
Yeah, but if you have a VPN,
No, yeah, if you have a VPN, you're pretty much clean.
well, how does the Wi-Fi router knows what that code is?
So that first part is still knowable. That part of like get me out of this server is still plain text. Everything else besides that is encrypted. The location, like not the location, the domain name is encrypted. But the get me out of this sort of, I guess say system or router is still there. Mhm.
So let's say like maybe you're not yourself, but let's say if I was like an owner of a hotel, how would I try like prevent this from like people just easily coming with a little thing?
Okay, so the question was, and please correct me if I'm wrong, okay, I'm an owner of a hotel. I want to prevent this from happening to my, I guess you could say, my customers. What can I implement or do to stop it? Okay, now I will say this. I know this guy. So I'm sorry to put him on the spot. But basically, when it comes to this is that, and you could do this with yourself too, it's called segmentation. You can segment a network. Typically speaking, I mean, back in the day, it took a lot more resources. But if you're learning cybersecurity, you know that, let's say this is the ABC company, right? And we're divided between let's say four departments: accounting, IT, let's say HR, because there's always HR, and someone said finance. I need a guy in finance, 6'5". So, right, should HR communicate with, should HR's computers communicate with finance? Should HR's communicate with IT? Should, like the idea of this, right, should they communicate with each other? Typically, HR and accounting, I don't think so, right? IT and HR, maybe when someone gets fired, right, that makes sense. So like maybe some connection. And then HR and finance, no. So what we can do is we can segment the network. And so each of these have their own exit point, and they can only see each other. They can only see themselves. So HR can only see HR's computers, finance can only see finance's computers, IT can only see IT's, and then accounting only can see accounting. This is something we call in cybersecurity segmentation, right? So you typically would see this within your own houses. If anyone who has like manipulated with their like home Wi-Fi router? Okay, I kind of bet you. So like, has anyone noticed that you have like 4 options now? like, let's say it was like 2.4 something, right? 6 gigahertz, like IoT. Has anyone seen something like this, like where you can have multiple different Wi-Fis? That is this for your house. There's a reason why you should really put all your IoT devices in the IoT network because it's segmented. These can't communicate with each other. And so in the event that your IoT device is compromised, it will not be able to monitor any of the other different networks you're on. So if you do not have that set up, you can go home and set that up properly. You had a question?
I was asking what IoT.
Oh, IoT, Internet of Things. So like Alexa, like Ring cameras.
Just a quick question. Aside from VPN, are there other ways people can protect their internet traffic?
So other ways that people can protect their internet traffic outside of the VPN? So there's a few different ways. Depending on what browser you use, I would recommend one called Brave. Yeah. In other mechanisms, it really depends on keeping your software updated. Like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but your iPhone, if anyone has an iPhone, you should update that. You should update that. There's definitely attacks that have happened remotely just because I'm close to you by Bluetooth. Now, other mechanisms that you could utilize to protect yourself or your family, I would say, keep track of your finances. There's definitely tools out there like Credit Karma or Aura that you can utilize to be able to be more better at monitoring those things, because you never know if you're compromised not through network traffic or through like a social engineering attack, like someone calling your mom or, hey, we need your driver's license, right? Identity theft is an ongoing problem. And so it's not just something that can happen through internet traffic, it can happen through other mechanisms as well as public data data breaches. So, wait a second. Who's over the age of 18? Yeah, I figured. Okay, so all of you, the moment you turn 18, are now susceptible to one big thing, which is data breaches. This was not a thing when you were a child because it was illegal, very illegal, to hold any of your social security information on any sort of database, right? Outside of schools and stuff like that and hospitals. Now, what data breaches essentially are let's say a company, let's say a very little known company like Equifax, which by the way is one of the 3 credit bureaus. It was hacked, I believe, in 2018. Over 200 million American Social Security numbers were released. I got by that. Someone opened a credit card account shortly after this happened. Not fun. Now, you can't do anything about it because part of the system of working, right, is I need credit. I want to buy a house or I want a car. And so what can you do around this is put in protections to say, well, I can't stop data breaches from happening, whether it happens from my favorite stores, right? If someone goes to Hot Topic, is that still open? I don't know. If someone goes to, let's say, Amazon, right, and is a frequent buyer or something along the lines of that, we're trying to ensure that we are visible, we have visibility into the things that we are part of and what we could be affected by, and introducing mechanisms of notification will allow us to be able to prevent that from happening, right? You would rather know that someone opened a bank account in your name than you never know until 5-6 years later, right? And so that's one thing you could do. In terms of actual technical software, if you want to go the firewall route, I would probably look up a company called Firewalla. They have firewalls that you can run in your own house. It's pretty cool. But ultimately, it's one other way to, I guess you could say, mitigate and minimize certain events from happening. But I'm so sorry to scare all of you, I know. This is a lot of information. Is there any other questions?
Referencing your saying using 5G instead of Wi-Fi, why is using your data provider safer that way?
It's not safer. So this was just a test. Well, I already deleted it, but it was basically a test, right? So let's say I'm connected to the FIU network and connected then to my VPN, and I can't go out. Why? right? You should get suspicious, right? Now you can check and see if your VPN is down, right? If there's maintenance or whatever the case may be. But if you can connect to your VPN through your phone, through a hotspot or like data, then that means someone's in the network manipulating your other device. And so it's just like a testing mechanism, right? Like it's kind of like when you have a car and it's like something doesn't work, you want to check all the other things too that could be a component of that. You want to be very, I could say, thorough, right? Because again, the safest hands are our own. You have a question?
So you said that you connect to the internet and then your VPN, right? So is that not inherently unsafe because you're on the internet for a moment, or do you have to actually do stuff on the internet?
Well, you can't connect to a VPN if you're not on the internet.
But is that a problem or no?
No, I mean, typically speaking, I mean, it's just the slight, yeah. Now, if you're been searching for like 30 minutes or whatever the case may be, then that's still going to potentially be exposed. But beyond that, I think you're clear. Like, this is not a solution that I would recommend you use in fear. Like, I do want you to use this purposefully. So, like, if you travel, if you go to Ultra, if anyone goes to Ultra, I'll see you there. If you go to conferences, if you go to like airports or hotels and just feel a little bit like, hey, this is a very shady coffee shop, right? Like if you want to utilize this in that mechanism, you're perfectly fine too. But overall, this is meant to be more of a substitute, but also an augmentation of your privacy.
And you have to like run it on your house, in your house, like with a
No.
Raspberry Pi or something?
So you can run it in your house, but what we're going to be doing is going into AWS, essentially renting a server, and then we're going to be applying it there. Yeah. So I think we should get to that point at this point. Is there any other final questions?
What are like some dumb security tips that you like?
Dumb?
Dumb in the sense of not like.
Don't reuse your password.
There you go.
Okay, if you really want to know the easy one, don't reuse your password, and don't tell your significant others your password.
That's really the main one.
That has gotten me in the butt before. Not that I had done something wrong, but ultimately she had been using my Netflix for a while, and I just didn't know. Yeah, that's basically it. But
How do you feel about password managers like the inbuilt iPhone one and the Google Chrome one?
so I wouldn't use the Google Chrome one. I would not use the Google Chrome one, because if I gain access to Google Chrome, I then have access to all your passwords. But to get access to your phone is a lot harder, right? So to get actual physical access to your phone is a lot harder. So if you can use the iPhone built one, that one's gotten better over years. If you can use something like 1Password, I would use that. If you want to build your own, you can. Wouldn't recommend it, but just saying, wouldn't recommend it. But if I would ultimately start using sort of like iPhone or Android's own password managers, yeah.
Actually, this is a question for the rest of you guys. How do you guys actually use the Google Chrome browser? Because I know I have my password there.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was also a victim of that. I used to use it for years because it was just so simple and easy. But it's something that took me a second to be like, no, this is a very serious, very serious. And I'll leave with one more thing. So, I've spoken about some of the companies I've worked for, and I've told you this story, so please do bear with me. But one of the most interesting stories I've had while working at this company was that a massive financial institution, who I cannot name, but I have my money in, was being attacked across the globe. So we at AWS, we have multiple different regions across the entire globe from every single continent outside of like Antarctica yet. But they were seeing attacks in over 200 POPs, which are called points of presence. Massive, massive attack. And they had contacted me as a security specialist and a few other people, and they brought us all into a room, and they're like, okay, the CEO or the CISO comes in, and he's like, okay, is everyone on AWS side here? Cool. Is everyone on our side here? Great. Gentlemen, we're all guys. Gentlemen, money's not an issue here. Everything will be accepted. We need to resolve this. I had never been more proud to have more money in that bank in my life, but this is such a common occurrence, right? Every day I'm working with companies that I myself buy stuff from, and they're like, yeah, we're under attack. or we disconfigured our security configurations and now they're in. And I have to help them, right? And it's not coming from a place of like, I want money. It comes from a place of like, no, I actually want to do good by them, right? I utilize these products, right? I utilize this bank. So, there's stuff like that that makes me really happy and elated that security is becoming more of its own cybersecurity field. When I was a kid, cybersecurity was not a job, right? But now we've gotten to that point where like, no, this is affecting too many of us. Like people who were never in the game or never thought that their information would be out is now out, and it's due to these companies. So if we can take a little bit more protection or responsibility over that, I think that's gonna be a little bit better for all of us, right?
I just had a question. That's why because that's why I have I have passkeys on my phone with my face, so like nobody can get in my passwords or something like a Google that number, so I can be safe and know that the only thing that can get on there is me because I have the face.
Yeah, no, that's a big reason why I recently updated my phone from like an iPhone SE, which had Touch ID, to Face ID, was because I realized that, the technology had advanced to a point where I agreed with it, right? Where I could be like, it'd be really hard to sort of copy this. But I think, again, going back to it, right? The safest hands are our own. So whether we play a part in it or whether we don't, we kind of have to. And so I hope all of you do learn something. Now we're gonna go quickly into the workshop. It's not that hard to actually build this. You can follow along or you can watch as well. If you have any questions, please do ask. Let's see. Okay, so one more thing. If anyone is curious and just says like, hey, I would just want to follow along, you can actually also go to my GitHub afterwards and follow the instructions there if you want to do that and you just want to learn. Now, if you want to also follow along and continue with me, perfectly happy to do so. But that's also another option, right? Because being able to follow and catch up and do it with me is going to be a bit of a process. And so I do want to be respectful for those who are like, I just want to listen to you, man, and now I can do it later. Or I actually want to follow along. I want to give both of those options to everyone.
Recording, so this video is going to be uploaded to our YouTube, so you guys can watch it.
Awesome. How do I stream this?
Oh, you want to switch over?
Yeah.
And then you need to click like the share play. Now you just need to, you can leave that open. Like open button. Oh, you also use Brave browser.
Yeah, but now I can't do it.
Because you moved it over there.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my producing laptop. I only really make music on this one.
Yeah. You can just click that. If you want to extend it.
This one?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, mirror only that screen.
All right. Oh yeah, wait. Yeah, if you just want to, I'll actually just write it on the board if anything. So the question was asked, does it cost money to get the server? So the first 90 days is free trial. Yeah. You do have to make the AWS account and all that. Go on.
I was wondering, you could just host this, like, if I have a Raspberry Pi at home, I could just host
Yeah.
this on it and use it, like, all of
Yes, but then it would still route to your house. So it would still populate as your home IP.
So you're saying using AWS since it's like
So it's not that it's safer, it's that do you want to show your home IP, right? It's just like, that's just the question. You can use your home if you'd like, and that simplifies that process of having to use a VPN, but you can also use AWS as well, or any other cloud service provider.
But all the other like benefits of it being encrypted, your internet provider.
No, you still get the benefit of it being encrypted, but it'll still basically go into your home.
Can you choose where you want it to be still?
Yeah, so you could pick this to be in like Stockholm if you wanted to deal with the latency. But is there any other questions?
So if you were like just connected to straight 5G, would you still be like susceptible to some sort of attack?
No. I mean, outside of someone like doing like a SIM clone or something. So SIM cloning is essentially, this is more like not James Bond, like Jason Bourne type thing. Like, does anyone remember the second movie of like the Jason Bourne trilogy where like he beats some guy up, takes a copy of his SIM card? Does anyone remember it? So yeah, it's like, so basically if I took your SIM card, I can clone it. That is how it authenticates to the network, right, to your provider. Now, if two of those exist, they can exist simultaneously. Don't ask me, this was technology before we were born, okay? So I could SIM clone you, and so whenever you get like, let's say authentication text, right, like, oh, your code is one, whatever, I get it too. That's something that can happen. But if you use a VPN, you would be covered. Outside of that, you'd be probably covered. I say probably because that's a very sophisticated attack to commit, because I would need direct access to your phone and then to your SIM card.
Would you, like, is there a possibility of running an eSIM card or no?
eSIM? No. So that actually, the reason why they started pushing for eSIM is because of SIM cloning. Yeah, it was the solution to that of like, why are we still doing physical stuff when we can just do it electronically? But that is still a problem for a lot of older phones. But again, I would need, I'm saying I as the attacker, but they would need physical access to your phone to be able to do that attack. And it's a very cheap attack to do. One second. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so if anyone wants to find it, it's on my GitHub. From here, you can find it using the Skyhole. But ultimately speaking, we're going to just be going forward. So I'm just going to show you this. It's not a really hard process to do. Now, in terms of things that you do need an AWS account. You need a bit of time, a bit of money, a fifth grade reading comprehension level, and more time to troubleshoot. Yeah, I know, I'm still stuck at 4. So once you've logged in, what we're going to start doing is creating a Debian-based EC2 instance. Does anyone know the difference between a Debian and an Ubuntu? Yep, okay, so you're 100% correct. So basically, Debian is the underlining operating system under Ubuntu. Ubuntu is actually the main server system for about 80% of all traffic. All traffic uses Linux, but the majority of it uses Ubuntu. Ubuntu comes, or as a state, it's Debian-based. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a Debian-based EC2 instance. The reason we're doing Debian and not Ubuntu is because Debian by design is less resource requirements and also more stable. From there, we'll be going into a bit of a network detour, configuring some of the settings. Very simple stuff, but let's just quickly just go in. So if anyone's logged in or just wants to watch, the way you would go about it is you would go to Lightsail. So that is one of our services. From here, you would essentially create an instance. You can have other things as well, like containers or databases. So from here, you would decide the location of your instance. Do you want it in Virginia? Do you want to be like my friend? Do you want to be in Ohio, Montreal, Oregon, London, Paris, Frankfurt, Stockholm, Tokyo, and so on and so forth, right? Now, each of these locations has their own data centers you can pick. So you can pick, let's say, US East 1, and pick a different, as we call, availability zone. This is just a separate data center. Typically, what people do is they're like, yeah, I feel like everyone picks A, so I'm gonna pick B. It's a real thing. But from here, we're gonna be picking our instance image. Now, as I stated before, we're gonna be utilizing Debian. So what we're gonna be utilizing is Linux, Unix. So the blueprint is going to be operating system only. From here, we have a few options. And we're going to pick Debian 12.8, which is the newest, or as they call Bookworm. This is again free. You could download this yourself and run it yourself. For the optional launch script, this is basically stating, hey, do you want to run something when you first run this? I'm good. For the SSH key, you can create your own or use the default. This is going to be your mechanism of how you can get this onto your own device. But for now, we're going to be utilizing our phones. And so from here, you can set up automatic snapshots. Now, the reason I would not configure this with automatic snapshots first is because you want to get this running first, test it, then back it up, right? Now, as for instance plan, as I answered, you basically get the first 90 days for free. After that, it is about $5, and the resources that we get provision is half a gig of memory, 2 CPUs, 20 gigabytes of SSD, 1 terabyte of transfer, and this is every month. And from here, we can just identify and name our instance. So for this, I'll just name it FIU VPN. Create the instance, give it a few seconds. And so what this is essentially doing is it's provisioning an instance in the cloud for me to be able to utilize and connect to and do with whatever I want. I actually used to have, I mean, if anyone's a gamer here, I'd call the game called Valheim. Valheim? Yeah, it's like a Minecraft type-esque game. I used to have it running here. It worked great, and it is great. But for purposes, I was like, let me not show it so I don't get attacked. Not that I suspect it, but so if we go into the instance, it's already been provisioned and it's running. Now, one of the few things I do want to do immediately is go to the networking. Now, does anyone know IPv6? Like, can do it in their head? Good. I did not, you don't want to deal with that. Basically, the difference between IPv4 and IPv6, IPv6 is a newer version of the IP versions. It's like algebra, they started introducing letters. Yeah. IPv4 is that traditional 192.168, the sort of thing you would normally see on your phone or on your devices. And so we're going to be using and maintaining that. And so for now, we're going to be disabling IPv6. And we have certain rules that we can create. We can create an SSH to be able to remote to it. We can also create an HTTP to be able to sort of provide or provision anything. Now, one thing I'm going to do before we continue is I'm going to attach a static IP. You can provide it whatever name you like. I'm just going to give the default. And so this is now my static IP. Now I have one question, right? This basically stands that, or means that anytime my server goes up or down, crashes, whatever, it's going to maintain that IP address. So I can constantly ping that throughout anywhere. I can be in Alaska and it still technically will work and it'll be mine. Why do we want that? Does anyone know why would we want a static IP that never changes? Yes, so a problem that a lot of you probably have had in your life at least once was something called dynamic DNS. Dynamic DNS just basically means, hey, today it's one address, the next day it's another. It would basically be like if someone changed your home address every other week. Your mailman would be pissed. And so what this essentially is doing is saying, hey, no, we want to keep this forever as long as I say so. And this will make the entire process easier. Now, from here, we have a few things. We can go into the metrics. We can understand and view our CPU utilization. We can understand the timetables for that, if there's any sort of incoming, outgoing traffic. But for now, let's just connect. Now, the first thing we want to do is just immediately, 1 second. Cool. So one of the things we just want to immediately start doing anytime we're on a new server is update and upgrade it. So that's what we're going to do. So if you go into the GitHub as well, it's also in there with the instructions to update as well as upgrade. And this is just to make sure that we have the latest packages and security updates. You know, some of these servers are utilizing sometimes very old or very recently old versions, so we just want to make sure that it is the newest. Then what we want to do is upgrade. And what this is essentially doing is saying, hey, we've identified every package that is old, now let's upgrade it. So this shouldn't take that much time, but once this is done, we're going to reboot the server, and we'll continue actually moving forward with the ad-blocking VPN. Honestly, it's not a hard thing to do, but it took me a while for me to be able to build it in such a way where it's simplified, where you don't have to do a lot of manual stuff.
Just like curious, you have sudo apt in here, like in the GitHub was like apt get. Are those two different like package divisions?
Yes, so they're technically the same thing. So apt / get is the old way. So the old way of how it would be you would always put apt get. Nowadays you can kind of skip it. And that's normally how I do it now. I skip it. But if you ever have issues with doing sudo apt update and it doesn't work, you can always try sudo apt -get and it should work, right? Especially for like, 1 second. That wasn't me. Oh, okay. I keep forgetting. So it's asking us that there is a new version. What we're going to do is just say, hey, let's just keep the local version that we're currently running. And then we're going to reboot. So that should use sudo reboot, and we should be back in a quickie. But I have one last question, and this is for the last gift card. Now, I'm trying to make this as broad as possible so everyone has a possibility to answer. But ultimately speaking, when we've spoken about the legislative bodies, right? We've spoken about the laws. Where was the first instance that, let me rephrase that. Where was the last instance that had a massive impact in cybersecurity? That like it affected everyone? I kind of spoke about it. Huh? Well, I mean, technically you're correct, but I said the latest one. Technically you're right.
In 2018 with the social security stuff?
Yes, Equifax. So, okay, let me rephrase what I'm going to say now. What is the latest one?
Oh, the National Public Database, right?
The national what?
The public database? Is it the list you went?
That was one. Well, I mean, they get hacked all the time.
The UN?
Yes, but that's okay. So one of the biggest breaches that actually just happened right now was the United Nations. And I actually have to meet with them next week to be able to help them on this. But basically what happened was that one of the UN were susceptible to a social engineering attack. So they had contacted their own phone and said, hey, we're this ambassador, give us this information. They ended up leaking every single ambassador's data across their entire network. This is all public information. You can look this up. But this just goes to show that you should be a little bit more cautious about who you speak to on the phone, even if you're working at a job, because you never know what the alternative is, right? What's the meaning of it? So give me 1 second. Okay, so we're now going to move forward. Now, when it comes to installing Pi-hole, Pi-hole just got a new version, version 6. If you'd like more information on it, you can definitely look it up. But basically, the additions of it was that it just made it super lightweight. It's less resource prone. And so what we're going to start doing is actually installing Pi-hole to be able to run as our DNS sinkhole. Remember, this is going to be the solution that is going to be blocking our ads for us. And it's a very quick installation. Sure.
Can you guys see better?
Yeah.
So this is just basically stating it's going to transform our device into a network-wide ad blocker, right? Now, it's going to be asking that the server should need a static IP to function properly. This is something that you may need to take into consideration if you want to run this in your own home, given that some IP ISPs like to use dynamic DNS. But for now, we're going to essentially choose an upstream DNS provider. Now, Pi-hole by itself allows you to decide where you want to send your traffic. Your ISP, or whatever network you tend to utilize, makes that deciding factor. But here we get to decide if we want to send it to Google, to DNS Watch, to Quad9. I'm going to just send it to Cloudflare for now. We're going to be changing this later. Now, as for a block list, Pi-hole does provide its own block list. And so we can just say yes, but we can also add our own. Do we want to enable query logging? This is good for ensuring that when you're playing around with this, you're knowing what's being blocked. And so we do want to take logging right now. Now, Pi-hole by design comes with a privacy mode. By default, it will show everything. Every website you go to, and it will log that. If you do not want that, you can change it to essentially be anonymous, where it hides your domains and your clients, or hide just your domains and your domains. But for now, I'm just going to show everything, and I'll let this run. So I'm just going to quickly copy this. So this is the installation completion page. It's basically telling me that, hey, your IP address for your Pi-hole is this, and this is the password to get in. You can change this later. But for now, we're going to keep this and move forward. Now, if we go back to this just quick introduction of how we're going to utilize this, we've already completed 1/3 of this entire thing. Now what we're going to do is we're going to apply the VPN on top of the Pi-hole. I hear someone else getting called. So one of the things we're going to be utilizing, and this is just to simplify the entire process because we have many options, is something called Pi VPN. So if anyone knows what if anyone has utilized a Raspberry Pi, this is essentially how you would apply a VPN on top of it if you have one in your house, or if you want to stash one somewhere. But this is, just being honest, so this is essentially how you would do it. Now, there are other mechanisms of how you could apply a VPN, but this one is actually one of the easiest. And the reason is it comes built in to the point that it'll integrate and install all your network requirements to your Pi-hole. So there's no additional network changes that you have to make. So this is basically stating that, hey, PyVPN is going to use this server, ensuring that it has a static IP, which we've already done. So does it want to do IPv6 leak? Now, we're not utilizing IPv6, so we can say no. Now, as for this IP information, essentially just saying that, hey, we're recognizing that you're in Amazon, and so please do configure a static IP, and we just need to choose the local user. So that's going to be admin. Now, for VPN options, you have two open source, easy ones to utilize. OpenVPN is actually the standard across all of most companies. Most companies still use OpenVPN. It is free. The new hot kid on the block is WireGuard. It's faster, lightweight, and it's the one that I would recommend, right? If you care more about not losing speed or having a higher security bar, I would recommend WireGuard. If you want to use something that it can be utilized across multiple different computers, let's say like 20 years old, you might want to utilize OpenVPN. So, and just another thing too, like WireGuard has its own application you can install on the App Store. So you can just easily install it and then just add the tunnel. So how are we going to connect to our VPN? And how is our VPN going to go out of the server, right? We need to decide that port. By default, it's 51,820 or 518.20. You can change this, and I'm going to something that's a little bit more appropriate, like 52, what's today? Well, let's do 305, 52305. I need to ensure that I remember what this one is because I need to add a rule in the firewall to enable this. So 52305, right? Do I confirm those settings? And now it says, hey, we've detected that there is a PyO installation. Do you want to utilize it as your DNS server so you can get ad blocking on the go? We're going to say yes. Now, is this just confirming that this is the IP that you picked, the static IP? We're just confirming, and these server keys have been generated. So that basically completes everything up to Unbound. And this is just asking if I want to install security updates. It's asking how to add clients. And do you want to reboot? And we're going to say yes. Let's see. So if we go back to Lightsail, one of the things we're going to be doing is going back to networking and adding that rule to allow our VPN to come in and out. So we're going to add a rule. It's going to be custom. UDP is going to be the protocol. And it's going to be 52305. And that's about it. So what this is doing is applying or opening a port specifically for that VPN to connect in and out. And what we can do now is actually create a client. So I'm going to use the command pivpn space add, or PyVPN. It's going to ask if I want to give it a client IP. I don't really have a preference, so I'm just going to click enter. I'm going to say iPhone. Let's say iPhone 16. And now it's created a client key for it. It's created the configuration for it. And if I really want to, 1 second. I can now get a QR code that allows me to just easily add it to my phone. So if anyone wants to actually connect to it, you're perfectly fine and willing to do so. You're not going to get hacked.
So would you recommend just do this on a desktop?
Yeah, like you could do this on your desktop, you could do this on your laptop, but this would just be an easy way to do it.
Access, how do you transfer the services to different devices?
So with phones, it's a lot more simpler because you can use the QR code. For devices such as like a desktop or a laptop that you have in your house, I would use like FTP, the file transfer protocol. With Macs, it's a little bit more easier. With Windows, I do recommend a tool called WinSCP. If you want, I can also write it down on the board. Yeah, okay. So the tool is called WinSCP. It's for Windows. For Mac, you can use the terminal and just use the FTP protocol there. But the connection process for this is just that you need the PEM file, which you created when you installed or created the instance, and you can just download it there. So if anyone's connected to like a terminal or a server, it's the exact same process. One second. Okay, great. So from here, what we can do is I've connected my phone to the VPN. And what I can then do is I can monitor my clients. One second, I am not connected to the Wi-Fi. Here, 1 second. If anything, let's move forward to the Unbound process, and I will connect later, and then we can route back later. But for setting up the recursive DNS server solution, to be truth told, you could stop at this process and be perfectly fine. Most of my friends who have created their own VPN just stop at this process. They're like, yeah, I don't need to do any of that other recursive stuff. Nor do I want to, right? Because they would rather trust someone else to direct them than themselves. And that's a perfectly fine consideration, right? Once they know the risk and once they accept that risk, my job as their friend is over. I have to support them, right? As a good friend. Now, if you want to move forward with setting up your own recursive DNS server, and this is to cache your own queries, so you don't have to constantly go to these third parties, this is the mechanism of how you would do that. So you would install Unbound, and so we can go back to our and just give it a quick second. And while that is installing, what we're also going to do is, because of the way that Unbound communicates through DNS, it communicates through a very specific port, port 5335. And so we have to provide a bit of a configuration, which I've already had set up for all of you there. So if we go to this specific file, and we're going to edit it. If anyone, I don't know if anyone has used Vim or Nano, but you can use essentially a text editor and then simply copy this, paste it, and you are good to go. Now, one of the things I do want to state is that with utilizing something like this, it's meant to be more, I guess say, configured to what you need it to be. Adding more to it does benefit you, but if you want to utilize this in a mechanism that only works for how you wanted to set it up, that's perfect. There's no additions you have to make. So to ensure privacy, it's only going to be looking at IPs from local ranges, so you have to essentially connect to this so that it will work. If we scroll to the top, it'll do a couple of other things that we're going to be doing. So it's going to essentially not be tracking anything we do, because that's what we want to do. We just want it to work and not keep logs. Is it going to use IPv6? For now, I've set it up as a yes. It hasn't given me any issues by setting it to no, but I do want to understand that certain websites are actually moving to IPv6. And so we can still route using IPv4 and getting those requests for IPv6. And so I still want to maintain this just because that's going to be the future eventually, right? Do I want to prefer IPv6? No. And so some of the other configurations are just like, how do you configure gluing the requests or the encryption mechanisms that are put into place in the buffer size. But all of this is pretty much simple. And so what we're going to do is we're going to exit. We're going to exit and save the file. Now, if we go back to the GitHub, we can basically start actually restarting the Unbound service. Let's see. I might have misconfigured somewhere. Give me 1 second. Sudo service Unbound. Failed. Okay. Oh, I know why. So, Yep, there it is. Yep, that's fine. Let's see. So what I essentially was doing was confirming that I put it in right, and I accidentally put a semicolon in my excitement. So again, please do test this as you're, or being very delicate as you're doing this. So save. Okay, I got to request repeated too frequently. I think it's still, yeah. Let's test it again. Interesting. Okay, I guess it doesn't like me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this other VPN that I created actually earlier today. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you quickly the other process. So the configuration that we did was essentially the same, right? We're configuring the IPv6, ensuring that we're hardening it, configuring the buffer size, and ensuring that the privacy of the local IPs are set. From here, what we would essentially do is we would configure and test that the pi hole can communicate to itself. This should provide back a no error. And then essentially what we're doing is just test validations. So this should provide a failure. And the reason it should is because it should not amount or connect to anything. Yep. It should not amount or connect to anything. And this one should connect and provide a no error with a specific IP address. Yep, no server. And this provides a status of no error. Now, you can go forward with connecting and configuring the pi hole to basically maintain or change its upstream DNS server. And the way you would do this is you would disable the service, You would run the statements here. And all this is really doing is saying that with Debian specific, right, we're talking about operating systems, they actually have their own DNS package that resolves on itself. This would essentially disable that service, and this would essentially disable any sort of version of that for coming back. We would then restart Unbound and do cleanups. From here, we can start organizing our files, make a script specifically to run. So one of the things that I think everyone hates here, who hates updating their phones or computers? Who wish that it could just do it when I'm not looking, right? So what I also added as a cleanup process is that I created a short script for all of you. And what this is meant to do is that, actually I'll just show it. And then I'll first explain it, and then we'll go in quickly and do it. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be creating a script folder. We're gonna then create a shell script called update. We're going to go into writing and editing that. We're going to be applying this script. Now, of course, I know after today it's gonna be really hard to sort of trust me, but please do trust me a little bit. This will just update, upgrade. It'll update your pie hole as well as the lists for ad blocking. It'll clean any unneeded packages that you may have, and this will all run every single day once we get to the very end and configure it. But this essential script is basically saying, hey, I want you to update, upgrade the pie hole, and clean out any packages that I no longer need. So give me 1 second. Bless you. Okay, so what we've done, or what I've done, is I've created the folder, I've added the file, I've added the script, I've saved it, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect, or actually provide an execution. So have any of you ever tried to run like a new application you were trying to install, and it's like, hey, we need to confirm you're an admin? Like it's just like a yes or no question. This is basically, we're just saying, hey, just give permissions to this thing. It's a file we trust. So it's chmod plus x, and then the file. And from here, we're close to basically being done. If you want to utilize this and have this running every single day at approximately like 2 in the morning, because this uses something called UTC time, Universal Time. I believe it's London. You would go into your cron tab. Now, cron tab is essentially the automational tool that Linux uses. And so if you use sudo cron tab space -e, you can then edit, and this will run whatever you give it. And so what we're going to be adding into it is 2 things. One, we're going to give it the permission to say, hey, I want you to look into whatever this file is called update.sh. We still need to provide a path to it. And then I want you to, 30 minutes later, reboot the instance. So this is going to update, and it's going to reboot, and I should never have issues with this, with having like security updates I need to do. And so this allows you to have a very easy, clean way of having a VPN and having a server that you don't have to really maintain and manage much. But I do need to provide the sorry, I do need to provide the path for this. And the easy way to get a path for a file is 1 second. So I'm going to do scripts, pwd. So we can utilize a command called pwd, which is just the present working directory. We can copy that. And so again, what this is saying is, hey, go into my home directory, which has a directory called admin, which has one called scripts, which has a shell script called update. Now I'm going to save this, and that is basically it. Once you're done with this, it basically ensures that your system is updated and optimized without really going in and having to manage or do anything. Now, if you do want to have a block list or an additional block list, I've added a text file within. You can scan and see what some of these lists do. Let's say some of them have all been verified. I've tested every single one of them. Some of them have to do with advertising. Some of them have to do with tracking or telemetry. This goes more into like, have you ever, let's say, looked for a car and then every single site you go to next is telling you to buy a car? Or like you go to Instagram. I think a bigger one is like Instagram. Like let's say you look at a good friend of mine got me an Owala, like the water bottle. Love it. But she gave it to me and I actually looked up the Instagram. I've nonstop seen water bottle since, right? And that's me not using this all the time. So these tracking and telemetry lists are meant to essentially just say, hey, what are some like easy privacy ones we can get out? Any sort of malicious lists. These are lists of known attacks, right? Or spams or phishing or malware that you can just automatically say, hey, if I ever get something coming this way from that, just block it outright. Some of the other lists, now these may cause issue, so do use these lists with caution. I will not describe them, but these are essentially just some of the worst, like Facebook, just some of the worst lists you can probably get, at least for now. There are some testings to do with them, but everything else is pretty much good, and that is the block list. I also provided, I also provided an allow list. And what you could do is you can also scan through them. Some of them are kind of easy, like client 1 for Google. This is to access Google. You don't actually need to describe it. It won't block it automatically. But what you do want to do is, like again, if there's something you're going to utilize a lot, you might as well just allow list it so it just doesn't provide any issues in the future. Some of these have to do with like gaming. Some of them have to do with like Outlook, Office, YouTube. And these are just to ensure that you're not going to have any issues moving forward with any of these sort of services. And these are all just commonly whitelisted domains. I utilize all these in my whitelist. And if you ever want to understand how to add another to your whitelist, all you would need to do is use the command pi-hole W for whitelist and then black for blocklist, or sorry, B for blocklist. And that's basically about it. If there's any questions, you can ask them now. Yes?
So you would put the W and then you put the...
Yeah, you would just paste the entire. If you want to paste the entire list, you can. So the difference between these two is that this is an allow list, and it's meant to be more of like an individually based, like a domain, like let's say, what store are you frequent to? Okay, Zara, love Zara. So let's say you're getting some issues with Zara, you can then quickly go into the command and be like, okay, let's just whitelist Zara across the board. And that's part of the allow list of domains. The block list is an aggregated, known, like malicious list. So it's an actual list compared to like adding one at a time. Because what we're trying to do is we should be adding one at a time to allow, but we should be blocking a massive list that we've known are bad. And we can use those lists as well. Is there any other questions? You?
Because the VPN is set up in optimized
Yeah.
Is there any issues with latency or bandwidth?
So with latency and bandwidth, that is a great question. You will experience some latency. That's why I tend to recommend people to get a VPN that's close to them, right? So like Virginia is awfully close. At best, I probably gain like 15 to 20 milliseconds of latency, which isn't that bad. But in terms of like other VPNs, they're utilizing the same AWS cloud as well. So, you know, it's definitely a lose in performance from a latency perspective, but from a phone, once your Pi-hole or your recursive DNS happens, you should be experiencing a lot more faster traffic anyways. So it kind of balances itself out in that mechanism. Is there any other questions? You?
So if you plan to travel, it will be better to make the server in the location that you're planning to travel?
So if you're traveling, it would be more, you don't want to constantly be changing your VPN location, right? Or having to reconfigure it, because we don't really mind where our location is. What we want to do is protect ourselves at any location that we are in. So if I fly from Miami to Seattle, I'm perfectly fine connecting to Virginia, right? But let's say I'm in a different country, like a completely different country. And let's say that country has laws that basically stop me from watching Netflix. Do I want a VPN? Do I want to put a VPN in there, or do I want a VPN back home where I know? Yeah. So there's like conversation that you have to basically investigate yourself of, do you want to put the VPN in a place that may not suit your day-to-day needs, right? So like, just to give you an example, FIU is an international university, right? I've met people in Spain who actually live there and are currently still actually in FIU. But other universities are not, you know, international. And so what they'll do is they'll block like a third of the countries in the world. Why is someone in Madagascar looking at FIU or looking at UM, right? That's kind of a conversation, right? And that's a security question in itself. If I'm a business and I don't do business in Madagascar, why should I let people in Madagascar go to my account or go to my website, right? So it's a conversation to have with yourself about what you need to do every day, and then ensuring that you have the block list to mitigate and minimize the ads you don't want following you, but then have an allow list that allows the things you want to do. Like if you game, right? You still want to be able to game. You want to create that allow list that says, hey, I can game on Xbox or PC or PlayStation, and take that on the go. And so is there any other questions?
So, you know when you have an ad blocker on your browser, and sometimes some websites don't let you get in because of the ad blocker, would this work with that? Or?
Yes, so so his question was, with browsers, you can add extensions that are ad blockers, right? The thing with blockers on the browser is that it's already accepted the entire request, right? So it's accepted the entire request and it's sending back a portion. With the Pi-hole, it's doing it at the VPN level. So you have more fine-grained control over what you want to allow. If you want to allow your banking statements, you can. A browser extension will not give you that sometimes. It will not give you that ability to say, hey, with this website, I do not want to use that, right? And sometimes it does give you that ability like to pause or like don't work or don't use this here. But if there's any sort of concerns of like a browser, those browser extensions are constantly being updated. I don't know if you've ever been on like I don't know if you noticed when I connected to my internet or my PC, it opened up like ad block. And I still use an ad block extension because it plays a different role. If my Pi-hole can't block certain ads, I want that to do it. And so it's kind of like, you know, so yeah, in cybersecurity, we have something called layered in defense, right? We want to have multiple things to sort of stop what we're trying to stop, right? If I'm trying to stop a robber from robbing me, I want to have a gated fence. I want to have, you know, metal bars. I want to have dogs that look mean, right? I want to give that approach of layer in defense. And so, yeah.
Well, my question was more like they sometimes detect that you're using an ad blocker and won't let you like use the website. They ask you to like disable the ad blocker.
Yeah.
Will using the VPN in this case, will they be able to detect that and be like disable whatever you are doing that is not letting the ads in.
So what it'll do is essentially drop the request. If the website requires that the request come back, like, hey, I want that tracker request coming back, you could allow it if you want to. If you want to simplify that process, you can allow it. But let's say Business Insider, right? The news media, Business Insider. If you look at how their network works, they require their tracking data to come back. Yeah, it's like waking up at a nightclub. It's like time to go. But no, like there's certain websites that absolutely are built in that way because their audience, right, their actual consumer are you. You're the product. Your data is the product to other third parties. So if they're not getting that, they are going to stop you from accessing their content. And so again, if you want to allow it, if that's something, like if you're a massive, like Business Insider guy or anything like that, that's something to take into consideration of like, do you want to be a part of allowing that company access? But the whole conversation we've been having today, again, is accepting what it looks like, right? Trying to understand privacy and trying to make that decision for yourself of how exactly do you want to have that? Do you want to be super, super safe and never trust anyone? Or do you want to have more of a conscious decision of what you allow and what you don't allow? A great question. Yeah. What's your major?
Computer science.
Oh, okay. I feel like everyone's a computer science major. I feel like cybersecurity is like the minority. Is there any other questions?
Would that ad block or would that block the cookies, like those kind of things?
Yes. Yeah, so by design for Pi-hole, it's meant to stop trackers, cookies. Now, with certain cookies, I will say this, your browser will automatically keep them. So even if Pi-hole blocks it, it'll automatically remember it. And that's the way that if you ever access like Amazon, you're already logged in. And you're like, I remember closing my browser. That's a mechanism of how browsers work. You can, again, change that within your browser settings. But that's definitely a conversation to have with certain websites that you could just outright block the cookies and stop it on the browser level, and then every time you have to log in. But does everyone want to log into Amazon every time they make a purchase? I would be logging in like 5 times a day. So, great question. Is there any last questions?
Is there a command that we can use to like see like who's accessing our data or something?
Say it again?
Like basically like monitor who's accessing our data?
Like who's accessing your data? So there are definitely places like third-party companies that aggregate tremendous amount of data. Honestly, do you have a unique name? I ask this very purposefully. You don't have a unique name? Is it very common? Okay, what I want you all to do is to Google your name and add a bit of data to yourself. So be like, whatever your name is, Miami, Florida, and then maybe your birthday, and just see what populates, right? If you see it on voter records, because as I stated before, once you turn 18, all that records becomes public. I could find out your birthday, your who you voted for, all that. You can go to those websites and say, hey, I do not want my information on this. I want to opt out, and you can just submit an easy form. You don't need to show identification. You can do this for your whole family as well, and that's definitely another way you could take back some of that information. Now, some of the harder information, like Google Analytics, stuff like that, that might be a little bit more harder if you've been utilizing that tool for so long and they've already created this profile. But you can always just do what I've done, which is I'm gonna just delete this account, contact them, tell them, hey, delete all my information, and then create a new email, and then just have that a little bit more clean. Yeah. But yeah, honestly, I hope all of you have learned something. If anyone has questions, I'm going to, can I paste my GitHub? Not my GitHub, my LinkedIn. I mean, you can also find me. I have a very unique name, but 1 second. Huh? Oh, so yeah. So did anyone decrypt it? But what was the decode? What was the encoding of it? Huh? Well, it was base 64. Okay, but who discovered it first? You should have told me. Okay. So you two, wait, did anyone else discover it? Okay. Okay, that's 4 people.
I didn't know if we were supposed to like wait till you showed it to everybody.
Oh, you could have stopped me at any point. Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, I said you could stop me at any point, ask questions. Is it possible to use the projector just to show my LinkedIn? All right. We could just present this. Okay, so it was 4 people, right? Okay, you and you. No, you're gonna do a rock, paper, scissors, 2 out of 3. You and you, rock, paper, scissors, 2 out of 3. Then whoever wins between the 2 of you, 2 out of 3. Whoever wins, I will pay for your certification. Go. You can, yeah, that's fine. I don't work tomorrow. I'm gonna go skydiving.
That certification coming in clutch.
But yeah, so it's going to be
How much is the certification?
for what? For skydiving? Like $3 grand.
Can you sponsor my skydiving certification?
I can join you.
I went skydiving once. It was
Oh, okay. You can push me out of the plane if you want.
I can push you out the plane.
Yeah,
Do you do flips?
yeah. I have videos if you want to see.
Wait, have you been an instructor, like the person on the person back?
No, I can't. I'm not there yet. That's like thousands of jumps. That's like a full career.
That, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, actually, let me see. So I think I added it here, but let me see. So this is, I was going to show this, but I kind of was like, nah, let me not. Yeah, I was going to show that, but I was like, nah, I don't want to scare these people. Because that was one of the things that I was told originally, like, hey, like, we don't sanction, like, skydive trips. But if anyone wants to, like, hit me up on LinkedIn, like, yo, like, can I push you out of a plane? I will perfectly let you push me out of a plane. I throw myself out of a plane. But yeah, what's up? Oh, I thought you had a question. Oh. Huh? Bro, I wish. I wish. My only fear is a helicopter will just come by and just swat me out of the sky.
I want your link, I want your right ID.
Say?
I want your right ID.
My right ID?
Riot.
My riot ID? Sure, yeah.
That's what we want to leak.
Yeah, oh, do you have my LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Yeah, just hit me up there. Yeah.
You said you produce, what DAW do you use? What DAW?
Oh, what doll? Yeah, I was gonna say like no one says DAW. That's like yeah, you're good. That's like people who say DDoS. So what he's basically asking me is like, so I produce music. I use it on 2 different. Actually, this is actually my producing laptop. Yeah,
That makes sense. Mac.
yeah. So I use 2. I use FL Studios, and then I also use Logic. Yeah. The other thing I'm trying to get into is Pro Tools. So I've created remixes for like Zed and a few other people, and I'm trying to get more into like actually putting that out there. Because I'm a little bit more like I want to create, but then I only want to show it to my friends, or I create really pop music or very like hip hop, and I only want to show it to my other friends. So I'm starting to get more into that process of creating and just sharing it outright. But yeah, man, if you ever want to hit me up and like, yo, let's just have a collab session, I'm down. I'm gonna be down here again in the end of the month, and I'm trying to collab with some of the other people that I'm in like classes with.
So you make EDM mostly, or like hip hop EDM?
Yeah, like mostly EDM. Yeah, mostly EDM.
I'm in the same boat.
Like progressive house. Is there any other questions?
I know you said you were, I don't know if you're going to Ultra, like,
Yeah.
you're DJing there? Like, you
So
have your own sessions?
no, I have had a session before at one of the smaller booths. One of the things that I started to do now is because I am still finishing up my master's and I'm probably gonna do my doctorate. One of the things I started doing was I started making music and giving it, like showing it to other producers. So I don't know if you saw in one of the photos, it was a photo with me, Martin Garrix. So yeah, so I went to the movie premiere that they had in Miami Beach a few years back. Yeah, none of my friends wanted to go because they weren't into EDM. But you know, over time I've collected enough of like a network where I kind of can make music and then I can be like, does this sound good, and give it to people. But I ultimately don't have a care or a need to like actually DJ anymore, like publicly. Like maybe if I put a song out and it gets big, sure. But ultimately I just do it because I enjoy it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how you should do it too.
You'd be surprised by the amount of people. Yeah, you'd be surprised.
But CJ. I don't know if you know him.
Wait, I actually think I'm in the same group as him. Yeah, I remember someone hit me up and they were like, oh wait, you're in Miami too? We should meet up. And I was like, I saw their name was CJ and I just thought of like the San Andreas, like boom, boom, boom. So maybe I might know him. It might be a small world. I wouldn't be surprised.
He's our coworker actually. We work in the same store. We work in Apple.
So, wait, what Apple store?
The new one. Downtown
Do you know someone named Maria?
Maria, what?
Coelho? She has blue hair.
Yes. Yeah, I know her.
Jesus Christ, small world. Okay. No, she's a,
She's creative there.
yeah, she's a friend of mine. I was just like, small world. It's very, very small world. Okay. Is there any other questions? Not about skydiving, not about music production, not about small world. Is there any other thing? Is there any, because this is the last time I'll probably see a great majority of you. It's really sad, I know. But no, I do want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I took 6 months many years ago to build this out for myself. And it only took me that long to be able to simplify it into something that could be done for 30 minutes. Now, when I came up with this idea of like privacy, I kind of came at it from the perspective of like something that everyone could understand and enjoy and maybe have a desire to build. But even if you don't decide to build it, I'm perfectly fine with that too, as long as you understand the message, right? The safest hands will always be our own. And one last thing, I do have a pin. I'm probably gonna give it to you. I think you won the award for the most questions, and I do like a lot of your questions. And you do know Maria. So you can be like, hey, I met this guy named Bryant. Really cool guy.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. But yeah, if anyone wants to contact me on LinkedIn, please do feel free. Like, this is not meant to be like a stranger to stranger conversation. This is basically like, if you have any questions about it, I'm perfectly happy to help you with your career. What's up?
What's your LinkedIn? 'Cause I didn't see it.
Oh,
Oh. I already sent the request, the connection.
what was your name? Just Mariana. Okay, I remember that. But yeah, that's my LinkedIn. Where is the other gentleman? So where are the four? I know that's you. He left? Okay, then. I mean, it's gonna be a challenge between all of you. So what we're gonna do is, I guess, just you guys can have it on the side, and then you guys, anyone else can just like cheer. I don't know. Huh? Like CompTIA one is like 300, 400. Yeah. I mean, I get it too. Thank you. Yeah. Huh? Wait, who won?
Oh, it's like those one.
It's tied. Okay, go ahead. All right, cool. Now you challenge him.
Now I verse him?
Yeah, so the whole thing, okay, so just to answer your question, well, it's not a question, but to answer what you stated. So something you guys should know is you can donate stuff and you can get it off your taxes. So I'd rather buy some of you a certification or take you skydiving or whatever, well, not that, but buy you a certification and be able to, help you guys than to pay the government. I'm saying that jokingly, but see ya.